Well, my mom asks me daily at breakfast time to take care of her primary caregiver. She has Alzheimer's, close to heart. It's like clockwork. Every day she asks me, so when did you become a damn Democrat? It takes a lot of time. The question is a complicated answer that involves a complicated, ever-changing pathway from the earliest parental imprinting and witnessing the world events seemingly on a daily basis changing growing up in the 60s and 70s. I was born in 1957 in Dalton. My father was a World War II U.S. Navy veteran whose ship was in both the Atlantic and Pacific campaigns, including D-Day, invasion, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. He was a small business owner of a pest control company, Modern Pest Control. Some of you may remember him. It was Lovingood. Mom retired as administrative secretary to the plant manager of AstroTurf Company, the world famous AstroTurf. And they met and married in Cleveland, Ohio before they had me. Dad was a lifetime inductee of the American Legion and the VFW. Mom was a civil defense volunteer to keep the civil defense bomb shelters stocked with food in the event of a nuclear attack by the USSR. My grandmother here grew up picking cotton on the farm in Murray County. And she eloped with my grandfather at age 13, so she wouldn't have to pick cotton anymore. Grandfather was a carpenter. He's the lead carpenter for FDR's Civilian Conservation Corps in the WPA. Mother's parents were my grandfather, a coal weigher in Pennsylvania, and her mother was a homemaker. All of them diehard Republicans for some reason. So I've tried to formulate these things over my life. My point of this speech is parental imprinting and where do we go and how does that affect our children and public education. I remember the nuclear bomb drills in grade school. I remember when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And now everyone in my 6-year-old's world, Democrats and Republicans alike, were all mourning. Because both parents worked, my sister and I were attended by a second mother. Her name was Dorothy, an African-American lady who grew up illiterate on a tobacco farm in Tennessee. She grew up deprived of equal opportunities and civil rights afforded to all Southern whites. My neighborhood was not unlike any other in rural Georgia. In fact, it struggled to grasp civil rights, the changing civil rights of the 1960s. I'll go and say they were all racist. My parents did not share the same racism of our neighbors, but it was still there, hidden and unspoken. And that contradiction troubled me a lot, having a nanny who I saw as a second mother and seeing our black and white TV screens, Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights leaders in Atlanta, Montgomery, and Jackson being beaten in fire hoses. And my parents were shocked as well. I saw the Vietnam War every night on Walter Cronkite. And Dad was against the war protesters because of 20 years earlier he was in the middle of World War II's most fiercest, intense maritime battles. Until the deaths of 4 college students shot down by the Ohio National Guard during the Vietnam protest rally on campus of the Kent State University of Ohio. That changed his life. It was like an epiphany to him. And I watched this epiphany of him going through it in my formative years. Because he saw the situation in which he could visualize that those 4 dead college students in Ohio were children who had parents who wanted them to do better and live better lives than they did as their parents. I saw Watergate and how egomania can corrupt a politician, and how the contradiction of Nixon's resignation in 1974 posed to my parents and their campaigning for Nixon in 1960 and 1968. I've got one of the little clickers that said, "Click the dick," in the 1960 campaign when he ran against Eisenhower. The contradictions fueled my own rebellious beliefs, very much so. Then along came Jimmy Carter, governor and president. His policies as governor that he put in place with the Georgia Geologic Survey and the Georgia Mining Institute would later help pay most of my costs in graduate school. from a master's degree in economic geology at the University of Georgia. Carter's signing of the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act of 1980, also called Superfund, put teeth into the U.S. EPA to force and require cleanup of our nation's worst toxic hazardous waste sites, and setting aside $8.9 billion in tax revenues for chemical manufacturing to enforce cradle to grave. I worked in mining in Nevada, and I saw the buildup of the Sagebrush Rebellion. Channel Clive and Bundy there. And also, similarly, the oil and gas industry in Louisiana. I worked for Texaco in the ultra-deep water of the Gulf of Mexico. I left in 1988, shortly after the Valdez oil spill, and also the decline of the oil industry. I started having little complications with my ethics feeling about that. And I joined a job in Georgia with environmental cleanup in the environmental cleanup industry for the U.S. EPA. Over the past 5 years, I've worked both in environmental matters and industrial development because, in my belief, it is that good laws put in by the Democratic Party can achieve and obtain strong industrial base and economy and a preserved environment and safe for our children and our children's children. I believe that we have a state and a country in which all people have the same opportunities for success. One that preserves voting rights, civil rights, LGBT and marriage equality. The one that does not sacrifice our children's public education system in favor of privatization and charter schools created in the image of wealthy moneyed interests that seek to create their future electorate by changing the minds of children and their parents using the power of fear and leverage. Because of my progressive beliefs in strong activism and human rights, including equal rights for all people, LGBT included, that cost me a job in Atlanta. Because without the INDA and no Non-Discrimination Act, I was terminated from employment as an LGBT person. I was working on a very large power plant. All the environmental permits for a very large amount of power plants not been built yet. And they said to me, "You're not somebody we can put out into the public about this. Why are you there protesting for these people? Why are you helping them?" So I was exited out of the company, which turned me into even more voracious activist. So I moved up here. I now work for the same clients because they weren't satisfied with the people that they placed me with.
That's a good point.
So, and still, my wife, mother of my daughter, and I instilled the concept of democratic principles in our daughter for her own personal journey into a brighter future. I'll read to you a short quote, a few passages written by one of my favorite poets and authors, Khalil Gibran. "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come not through you, but from you. And though they are with you, yet they do not belong to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts. For they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your wildest dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday." When we seek to take away the tools and resources of educating our children, we take away our country's future by taking away our children's future. Thank you.